Hey everyone, Imaya here, the psycho-spiritual therapist, and today we're going to be diving into perception. Perception is everything. Perception is our filter. It is how we get to experience life. And there isn't really much more to awakening, this process of awakening to reality and to your true self, than perception. So everything is within consciousness. Everything happens inside of consciousness. Your consciousness is not inside of your body. Your body is inside of your consciousness. Everything, this whole reality, is happening inside of our consciousness. Our mind is an aspect of consciousness that, like I'm speaking here about the physical mind, the lower mind. This acts as a filter, a prism that then kind of alters what we perceive and what we see, and so we get physical reality. That's why we sometimes call it an illusion. But the experience of it is very, very real, right? So perception happens through what we install in our mind. Perception is a result of the filter, of the prism through which we look, through which our consciousness is peering. And this is why mind training or focus or concentration, meditation, I personally just call it mind training, is everything. Our subconscious mind has so many programs, so much conditioning. We are continuously running on autopilot and calling it free will. So the conditioning, the program that is in our subconscious mind is what ends up being perception. Our beliefs and our definitions are the building blocks for perception. So we use the word rose, and then we say, okay, well, these are the attributes of rose. This is the definition. And our belief systems, built on top of those definitions, we build belief systems. And so those two together then create our perception. Perception simply means that we have blinders on. Those horses, those race horses, and they race, and they have these blinders on so that they don't get distracted and see anything else. This is what our consciousness does. Consciousness sees everything. Consciousness is everything. But then we put the blinders on and we just have the mind and we have the awareness. And so we say, okay, this little sliver that I see, that is reality. And then what perception actually is, it creates it even narrower. It creates like a very highly individualized interpretation of that single slice of reality. And we can test this for ourselves. Don't just listen to these words and say, okay, I get it, I understand it. No, test this for yourself. Start finding proof. It's not hard to find. All it takes is willingness. This willingness to open your mind, this willingness to be wrong, to see differently, which means sometimes it means you are wrong. Why? Not because what you were thinking before was wrong, but only because we thought that what we before were thinking and seeing was the only truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And that is not true. All right? If you see this, it doesn't mean that this is not true, but it's not the entire truth. And by saying this is all there is, and then actually this is also what it means, and some other filters, and you say, well, this is what it, so many distortions, which is fine because it's still part of reality. Because every perception that could ever exist together, that is reality. So, the process of awakening is by taking off the blinders, by widening them bit by bit by bit to see more of reality. And the more we see of reality, the more we see that before we were wrong. And this is a good thing. This is a great thing. Because being wrong but not acknowledging that we were wrong is what was creating a lot of suffering, because we're like, well, this is how reality works, and reality sucks, right? Let's face it. We're all constantly confronted with challenges, with lack, with pain, with hurt, with misery, with frustration, with agitation, with confusion. It's only because we see this. There's this beautiful story about a couple of blind men and an elephant. So there's an elephant, and there's, I don't know, like 4 or 5 blind men that are asked, what is this? So they're all touching, like one of them is touching the trunk, one of them is touching the tail, another one is touching the leg. And then when asked, and they're told, like, okay, this is an elephant, and now describe an elephant. They all have a completely different and unique description of an elephant, which is not wrong, it's just incomplete. Perception is the same. We see so little, and based on that little information, we draw way too many conclusions. And based on limited information, we live our lives, and this is why we keep hurting, because reality is trying to show us that there is more to it, but we misinterpret the message. And we think we need to fight against it, and we're in denial, and we're in distraction, and we're trying to fix our external reality instead of receiving the message. All right? So, where was I going with this tangent? Perception is everything. Taking off the blinders is the process of awakening. Mind training is a way to do this. Mind training, in the way that I'm using it here, is you can compare it with meditation. However, I personally work with a different form of mind training. Sometimes in conjunction with meditation, although I have to say, meditation in and of by itself, it just wasn't my path. This is also the thing. There is infinite different ways to wake up to your true nature. Enlightenment. There is as many different paths as there are humans, okay? This is a big thing that we haven't really learned yet. Enlightened masters know it, but still at the same time they're teaching kind of their way, and they understand this is not the way, this is not the only way, this was my way. You might try and do that for yourself or recreate it, but at the same time now we've ended up with, okay, well, there is forgiveness, the way by Jesus or Christianity. There is meditation, there is yoga, there's mindfulness. So we have a few of these paths, and we're like, okay, that's it. And many of us try a few of these paths, and then we're kind of like, I can't really find it. And then there's still all these other issues that I can't really. If we're really honest, we've been trying to put on shoes that don't completely fit. That is because we are supposed to discover our own way. And we can use the tools, and we can use inspiration of the paths that others have laid out before us. In the end, it all comes down to the same thing. Meditation is mind training. Mindfulness is mind training. Forgiveness is mind training. It's all to do with perception, with correcting your perception, and with focus and intention. The intention to see something that you haven't seen before. Which is the same as to say is to open your mind. Which is the same as to say, like, I need to be willing to see where I am wrong. Not wrong as in bad, not wrong as in guilty, or not wrong as in, shameful. Wrong as in, if life isn't 100% the way I want it to, wouldn't it be great if I were wrong and there was a better way? So this video is all about mind training. How working on the level of definitions and belief system changes the filter, the prism that you have through which you see life. It plucks away the conditioning, the programs that have been installed in your subconscious by society, by yourself, which is part of the game that we're playing here, okay? This is nothing to be ashamed of. This is nothing to be afraid of. You've done nothing wrong. This is where we are at the current point of our evolution, of our journey, of the game of incarnation here that we're playing, of separation, the game of separation that we're playing. You're doing it exactly right. So when we understand what perception is and what mind training is, life becomes something different. We don't have to go to a school. We don't have to go to a teacher. We can, by the way. Same for meditation. It's kind of almost blasphemous, I would say, in conscious circles and dialogues to say meditation is not the only way. Yoga is not the only way. Everything is a way. You are your own way. You have your own personal way towards awakening. Yes, that means you don't need these videos. You don't need the tools and the insights that I share. You don't need meditation. You don't need yoga. You don't need veganism. You don't need anything out there. But at the same time, everything can serve as inspiration. Just so long as we don't grab onto that inspiration as being the way. That is all that I'm saying. Which is why most of my content is more to do about you wanting you to recognize that this is how reality works. You are your own way. You have already all the tools and the information and the wisdom and the knowledge to awaken yourself. But that does not mean that we can't use inspiration. I've had so much inspiration along the way, so many teachers, but never in a traditional sense of I'm following this path or this path, because that's just not my way. So, mind training. I share a lot of insights about how reality works. I share a lot of insight about what reality is like on the other side of your conditioning once you change your perception. I also share a lot of tools of what you can do to do this mind training for yourself, how to become your own personal trainer, if you were. If we make the analogy with your body and go into your gym and having a personal trainer, you don't need to, but it's very, very effective. And all of these tools are just that. They're just tools. They're just made up processes. You think it's any different when you go to a psychologist or this or that? It's all made up processes. We don't actually need the process. But because we think we do, it's helpful. Use your imagination. Draw inspiration from a lot of different sources. But imagination and contemplation is what opens your mind. Question everything. And question everything has become very popular because we think it means question the people around you. Question your gurus and your teachers and people that give you any kind of information. Sure, yeah. Question your own mind continuously. Your mind is an amazing tool, an amazing instrument. But if you believe your own thoughts, that's where it gets tricky. So mind training, in a way, is like a focus. It's like drawing a little dot, a little circle on the wall and focusing on it and letting... Actually, one of my favorite meditations is to sit with my eyes open in a busy space. And yeah, I understand this exists in Indian yogic traditions and stuff, but I'm not a yogi. I've never done it. But as soon as I started doing it, I was like, oh, this is what they're doing, and I understand why. Meditation is not the only way. There's infinite ways. You can make up your own practices and your own processes. Any kind of mind training has this focus, this goal, well, to change your perception. But it's like, the metaphor is like this. You have a focal point out there in the distance. And everything that happens in between, all the noise, it doesn't distract you. It's the same when you know how your mind works, when you know how to drop in, how to surrender, how to not attach to all of your thoughts. Same with the outer reality, because it's kind of the same thing. It's just your thoughts externalized. For you to be in the world, yet not of it. For you to just have this as a playground, to be like, wow, this is fun, this is cool, no matter what happens. To know that you are safe, to know that you are supported, to know that you are in a kind and loving universe where nothing is wrong. Things do happen, but not to you, but through you, but for you, but as you. This is what we're all looking for. We call it happiness, we call it unconditional love, we call it inner peace, we call it God. Same difference. It's a way of being in the world. Mind training is the way. Through training your mind, you train your perception. And perception is this. Imagine you have a TV. All the programs, all the channels are already there at the same time. You tune to the channel that you want to see. It's a different frequency. That is all. The same goes for our perception and the world we experience. Sounds very far-fetched, sounds very sci-fi-ish. No, because I'm not talking in terms of like, oh, I do some like the force mind training, and all of a sudden I see like a blue elephant riding a mouse. Why do I keep that? I didn't mean for that to come up. I'm not speaking in anything quite as funny and outrageous as that. I'm simply saying your interpretation of the world, and therefore your emotional reactions, which keep feeding back into your beliefs, that whole cycle, it stabilizes. You don't check out, it's not spiritual bypassing, it's an actual process, it's an actual place that you end up in. How? By increasingly opening those blinders. And you see what was never there before. You see the bigger picture. The bigger picture is always one in which love is real, in which you are safe, in which there is no problem. There are situations, there are never problems, there are never issues. There's no need to defend yourself, there's no need to attack anything, there's no need to get more money, there's no need to change jobs or houses or this. You are simply good. And from that place you can play in reality. It becomes play. Instead of stress. So, perception is everything. Mind training is how you alter your perception. Perception is the shape in which your mind is. Just like you go to a personal trainer or you go to the gym and you do it by yourself, doesn't matter. You train your body. Same way you train your mind to get your perception in shape. And I don't have to explain to you the difference between being in a very, very unhealthy, perhaps grossly overweight, sick, diseased, almost dying body, how that body experiences life, versus someone as a really, truly healthy, fit, optimal, not through control, through training. Which training comes from a place of love, focus. So, a couple of takeaways from this video. Start looking for proof of how your perception actually creates how you feel, not the other way around. Cause is internal, effect is external. Cause is internal, effect is external, not the other way around. Start looking for proof of how you've been wrong in the past. How you've seen one thing and then later you saw another thing. That's great. That means that there's another world out there waiting for you, which is way more benevolent and kind and loving and supportive than anything you could have ever imagined. So find proof for that. What was the second one? Yes, use your imagination. Know that you can make up your own tools for awakening. If you're like, I don't like teachers, know that there are infinite ways, and so mind training in the way that I do it, all of the tools that I share, instead of long meditative sits, not instead of, actually, in conjunction is always better, but my mind training consists of the first 2 minutes, sometimes even less, sometimes a little bit more, in the morning before when I wake up, before I drink anything. First thing, centering my mind. Doesn't have to be meditation, just saying like stuff, and I do different practices per week just because it's all the same work from different angles, wanting us to end up in the same place, which is truth. Basically, my intention for the day is, let's say, for example, to have an open mind, to accept, to welcome everything that comes into my experience, to see something differently if I have an issue. My main priority is my internal environment, not the external environment. I know that's a result, and I just so my training most of the time is just really focus. Like I remind myself, okay, that's my focus, my intention. Remember, the rest that happens in between your focal point and that focal point over there doesn't distract you, doesn't end up distracting you. First few minutes in the morning, your mind is so open and malleable, so open to suggestions. Plant that seed. You don't need hours of spiritual practice a day. You don't. You can, yes, but you don't need it. Using your imagination. That's about it. Yeah. Come up with creative ways. Use inspiration from everywhere. But know that it's all about mind training. Mind training alters your perception. First few minutes in the morning, your mind is the most malleable. This is where you set your intention. And then throughout the day, you remind yourself of your intention as much as you can. It's not about perfectionism. All right, guys. If you want more, go to imayasabina.com/subscribe, and I see you in the next video.